Grace stood in the hallway of the school and listened. Girlfriend should have come here. They both did not want to sit at school desks. They agreed to meet and go to the dining room, to drink coffee and talk. Grace jumped on a high windowsill and shook his leg out of boredom. Knot was nowhere to be seen. They hesitated, having heard, "How does the door around the corner open?" If this is a teacher, then they will return to class. They will also call their parents and say for absenteeism. Young woman calmed down when a familiar black-haired head popped out from around the corner. Not waving her hand. Grace jumped off the windowsill and hurried to her friend. They went down to the dining room, took coffee, a chocolate bar, and 2 potato pies. On the streets south, and on days like this I want to drink hot drinks, there is something ugly, satisfying, and it created a feeling of comfort and tranquility in the soul. Girls sat in the corner of the dining room, to make it less noticeable if the teacher suddenly comes. "Well, tell me, how was your date yesterday?" asked Not for. "Simply luxurious. I was so happy. Here, look." Grace showcased a new gold ring. "Listen, this is how he teases you." "How you took this?" asked a friend. Like this." "Yes, Lucky just met the app and started spinning. Infuriated only that he is still a wife. But Jordan immediately said that they do not live as a wife. Everyone says like that, and then they throw, when they play enough. Moon don't care. Either take him and his family, or find something else. To me seems that with such a suitor she will not have to study. Gifts then above the roof. Steep automobile, suit, immediately visible, that he has money, Grace argued. Lucky you, they. You better think, how do you get him out of this family? Wives are like in a chain, don't take them off. A man walks to the left, they all look into his mouth. We'll figure it out with my wife, I saw her pictures, dumb. At 30 they are the same age, more likely, maybe a couple of years difference. Girlfriends continued the conversation, but the pies were already eaten, and chocolates left only a wrapper and shiny foil. Grace suddenly sighed when the bell rang. She looked at the street, where the wind howled. I didn't want to go home in this weather. She called Jordan and asked for a taxi to 2 addresses. Yellow. The car drove up to the school building. They didn't carry to the back seat and continued the conversation. By 15 minutes it did not work out at your entrance. Grace closed the car door. By 10 minutes she was at another entrance. Young woman raised her head, inspecting the shabby old building. She dreamed of moving out of here and starting the life of Jordan, but he still resisted living together. Grace entered the hallway. I took off my ring and put it in my bag, so that the mother would not see. But she's lucky, no one was at home. Sister went on another adventure, and mother was at work until the evening. At home, there was no one. Grace called Jordan. He drove up an hour later, painted, dressed up, instead of jumping out of the entrance and getting into the car. She kissed her lover and said, and amp, quote, "Where do you want to go?" And amp, quote, "Listen, Jordan, I thought here," Grace started. "Not start this story again," snapped Jordan. "Maybe you will rent an apartment for me, then you don't have to hide from anyone. You can stay overnight, whenever you want," Grace suggested. "A good idea. By the way, Mom won't tell you anything?" asked the man. "No, she doesn't care, they don't care at all. Where am I and what is happening to me?" They confessed and turned away. She looked out into the street and thought, how to twist the conversation in your favor. Jordan on the way called someone and then said that tomorrow the apartment will already be found. They smiled because the first step has been taken. They let's go to a restaurant, had dinner and went to the hotel, where they stayed until the morning. Jordan took them to school and said what to call about the apartment. Young woman nodded, smacked Jordan and went to school. First was geometry. There was no way to be late. By 2 days they had already woken up with their beloved in a new rented apartment. Now she was in charge here. Mother said, "What will life with a guy do?" Pa just shrugged and said, "So they don't contact her, someday the department will screw up." All it was going great, but did not want to show herself as an ideal future wife. She tried to clean up, prepare, come up with something unusual for him, to please Jordan. Here saw change, and he really liked them. By 2 weeks Jordan came with things. Rejoiced not that now they will live together, but was not so happy that did not even think about the consequences. In the morning the girl dialed Grandma's number. Beverly loved her granddaughter, though I understood something isn't serious trouble. Elderly woman tried to warn the girl not to repeat the history of her own daughter, but Grace shrugged off, spoke, which everyone already knows. Beverly gave up attempts at moralizing and just talked to her beloved granddaughter about the weather, study, and favorite activities. Nor does the young man offend her, which in fact was not so much a hammer. Having finished conversation with Grandma, the girl packed her things and hurried to school. Black a short dress sat somehow back to back, and I understood that it's time to stop eating pizza and burgers and move on to vegetables. To hide imperfections in the waist, the teenager picked up a cropped stylish jacket. "Hello" to her cool look, said Kayla, fixing my friend's jacket. "Thank you, don't hug me." "Just me, seems, got the flu," Grace said. "No wonder that the school will be closed for quarantine soon. More than half of us already have a fever," clarified Nanan. "Maybe a headache and severe nausea. I, by the way, recovered by 3 centimeters, dressed in a narrow village. Necessary counting calories again," mentioned Grace in passing, when they sat down at the desk. "You my parents returned, islands for my studies," said Kayla, rolling your eyes. "I don't care at all." "Fine, what Jordan okay for my triplets, what about Grandma then?" read up and down, "but she's matched yes, stretched out not for, grandmother, you have a credit. It's a pity that it moved. By lived with you, you were fine." Grace agreed. After all, really, when Grandma lived with them, all of them were great. But due to work, she had to return to another city, where it took more than 7 hours. Grace I would give a lot, and that the grandmother was near. Rang call, cabinet. The teacher came in. He checked the students and started the geometry lesson. After class, friends went to the dining room. They did not want to eat at all. From nausea in the throat. Young woman tensed up. When it got really bad, she pushed the cue, covered her mouth with her hand, and flew out of the room. Kayla ran for a friend. Soon they were both in the toilet. Understanding what happened, they washed up, fixed her makeup, and turned to face her friend. "You stupid," Kayla said. Grace kept quiet. She went through hundreds of reasons in my head, for which she could be so sick from the smell of buns and hot porridge, but she understood that there is only one answer. Girls skipped geography lessons. Grace went to the pharmacy, bought 3 different ones, and they all showed positive results. "I am pregnant," Grace summed up quietly. "I'm just in shock." How much did we talk about it?" "Well, now Jordan will definitely marry me." Grace was merry. "They wake up from your pink snotty dreams. If he left his wife and 2 children, then you definitely can't keep him pregnant." Grace thought, but the same dismissed these thoughts. To her, I wanted to quickly discuss everything at home with a man, and then make a decision. After school, the girl went to the gynecologist, which confirmed her fears. Doctor said, what if she wasn't 16, then she would have to declare custody. But now she can decide for herself, keep the baby or not. Grace listened to the young woman's warning and hurried home. Jordan she met in a good mood. Man came gloomy, obviously frustrated at work. He's been annoying everything lately. I just wanted to break loose on someone to relieve the emotional burden. Grace fed him, waited until he moved away. "Bosh, I am pregnant," said the girl, when they sat down to watch a movie. "I knew. I came home this afternoon, and on the table was an open chocolate bar and salted crackers. A woman also sweet and salty ate together in buckets, when she was pregnant. Cold, himself to blame." "You sure asked?" "Yes, I did it to her doctor." "Doctor said, which is 4 weeks?" "Cold, fine, so be it. Once God gave, so we will give birth." Jordan hugged Grace, who immediately calmed down. She did not expect that he would take her news so calmly, but was glad that everything went without incident, no scandals, mocked, and countdown. Young woman calmed down, dozed off, and slept until morning. She awoke when Jordan was no longer at home. Young woman stretched sweetly, looking at the smartphone screen. 9 a.m., Saturday. Not should have gone to school, and anyway she would just la, if it was a weekday. They brewed green tea, made 2 sandwiches with cheese and sat down at the computer. That tasted and read, how a child develops, how it affects health, ability, and mother's appearance. She is not scared, just accepts the fact that she will have to go through all this. They mentally prepared her that she would be forced to suffer 14 hours of contractions, but she was sure that since hundreds of thousands of women could, then she can. Young woman called my grandmother, talked for a few minutes, but didn't talk about what changes have taken place in her life. Only this life is getting worse day by day. Jordan was getting colder than withdrawal, didn't try to cheer him up, but the man clearly lost interest in her. Soon Jordan stopped being at home, spent the night, disappeared somewhere. They switched to distance learning, spent more and more time with the father of the unborn child. In the 3rd month Grace began to notice what Jordan getting colder and more reserved, and began to disappear even more. I do not believe that he disappears at work, Grace said, when they met them at the cafe. I told you, once left his wife with 2 children, you can't keep him pregnant, said Kayla. I still think of something in the evening she came home, when Jordan was already back. He took a dip for dinner, and they sat down together to watch the movie phone. Man lit up and highlighted the emoticon in love. I did not waste a second, and did not vomit the phone and open a correspondence. And my worst fears were confirmed. Jordan dated another teenager, wrote her the same love tirades, what they used to be. Young woman threw a scandal, pushed out Jordan out of the apartment along with things and sobbed. Until the morning. Grace couldn't believe that her beautiful fairy tale ended so quickly, because everything was so beautiful. She was able to take away the man's family, but fate decided to return everything to her with a boomerang. Despite mental and physical pain, Grace was grateful. That's exactly what happened. Until she gave birth, they wandered around the apartments of friends, handing over all the gifts. Rescuing a good amount, the girl left her for the birth of the baby. Home and they didn't let me in. Returned to a rented apartment, where Jordan repeatedly brought his mistress. She didn't want to. Hard to believe that more recently this mistress was herself. Young women are more and more depressed. Somehow in the morning she went to school, where she spent more than an hour in the director's office. She briefly outlined the situation. Young woman wanted to stay at a distance learning school, but temporarily moved to another city for a year. The director went ahead and agreed. Grace thanked the woman. I took the bags and 2 hours later I was sitting on the bus. A ticket she bought 3 days ago. She knew that there is no other way now. Bus stayed in every settlement, additionally braked twice in a special parking lot. Road took only 7 to 9 hours. They were wildly tired and his body, life. Very dark. I just wanted to lay down. Legs swollen. Young woman loosened the laces, and it got a little better. She threw the bag over her shoulder and went to the side of the same type of high-rise building. The houses were near the center, 20 minutes walk from the station, not more. They did not spend money on a taxi, yes, and it was useful for her to walk. Beverly drank tea, watching your favorite show. She resented along with the hosts of the program. To her it was very lonely in the spacious, empty apartment. Woman tried to distract herself. The last 2 years after the death of her husband turned out to be unbearable, heavy. Beverly took a break from work, hobby, TV and books, to somehow stop yearning. Resounded call, bird trill and scattered around the apartment. Beverly is surprised, because at this late hour no one comes. Woman rose, and the sofa went to the door. She opened it and saw my beloved granddaughter. Beverly with tears rushed to hug the girl, who also cried. So let's stop crying, said the old woman. Was here why is life so unfair, the girl mumbled. 8. Stirring sugar porcelain tall mug. Because there is no justice. All we face the consequences of our actions. Nam always has to make a choice, is it correct or not? But remember, Grace, never punish yourself for choosing. Past. If you did, it means it was the only acceptable option. Grace nodded. Listen, young grandmother's instructions. Young woman stroked her belly and waited. When the hot food in me warms up. Doctor said an amp. Quote, what do I need to eat 2,000 calories a day to not get better? An amp. Quote, said the girl is to blame. Nothing, let's rebuild, let's go to your food. Not worry, deliver a healthy baby. Only do not forget that I will always help you. How your mother is there. She didn't want to see me, and made a scandal at home. When returned, screamed more and brought her boyfriend. When I was exposed to the entrance, I wandered around the apartments, then came to you. So you should have come to me right away. I wouldn't say a word to you, you know. Grandmother and granddaughter spent the whole evening together. They watched the program, talked a lot. On the next day, the girl was registered in another hospital, and was already seen by a new doctor. Home she returned in high spirits, and immediately sat down for lessons. Ahead, well. It's a very hard life. I had to combine parenting and education, so it was impossible to throw everything away now. Grandmother, every evening they taught to knit and sew, so that you can save on some things. Girl, I wanted to learn how to sew sliders and simple things myself. Soon she began to work faster with a visual typewriter, coped with various programs, and just rejoiced that spends time with a person who really needs it. For a month flew by with all the worries. Young woman successfully studied, did homework. She focused on your own, for the baby's health. But inner anxiety is haunted. Happy, the phone rang. Yes, hello, Grace said, picking up the phone. A note that I said Jordan, whose voice she immediately recognized. What you need? Asked the girl. Eyes full, I understood that I don't need anyone but you. I know that you left the city. Let's all try again together. Let's raise a baby, give birth at a good clinic. I love you, there is a youngster. Was a mistake. They promised to think, but deep down she already agreed to his proposal. Young woman barely can hardly wait, when grandma comes home, to talk. Elderly woman came shopping. She brought bananas to granddaughters, kiwi, pomegranates and apples, but hearing that, what did granddaughter say, turned white. His life teaches you nothing, grandma asked. Once I went left once, so it's going to go there all the time. Slippery track. Life associates yours with such a man, it's a slippery slope. Banu. I love him. We will have a baby, busy girl. Love always passes, remains deeply respected, attachment, tenderness and affection. Then, after a couple of years, love comes again, which has stood the test of time. Here there is true love, until everything can be overcome. If want drive, but I warned you. They nodded. She was quite nervous. She remembered what Jordan said and how he behaved, and she had her doubts. On the next day the girl felt overwhelmed. Life was very sick, pulled down, twisted. Was such a feeling that there were metal prickly balls in the lower abdomen, which constantly turned over and rubbed against each other. That happened in the evening. Why is she so unexpected? She flipped through the feed on the social network and saw a recording of the live broadcast of the same girl, with which he did not change. On video. They hung out at the club, kissed. As it is seen, their relationship is clearly not over. She looked at the date. This was yesterday. Right after that, how they talked to Jordan. She all pounded from head to toe. They buried her head in the pillow and screamed. Internally, like a shell exploded. She believed dreams entrusted to Gosa. She crushed her feelings again. Young woman cried all day, then calming down, then again falling into hysterics. Grace lost track of time. The same video played over and over in my head. When grandma came home, she almost lost her mind. Young woman looked like a ghost, all white, sunken bruises under the eyes. I cried all the time and couldn't calm down, and then suddenly screamed and lost consciousness. Grandmother saw that the granddaughter was bleeding. Grandmother couldn't lift the girl, who fell on her, no matter how much she tried. Then grandmother raised her hand, that there is strength, and began to hit the wall and scream for help. Woman put all her strength to attract the attention of neighbors. Ludmilla in a neighboring apartment heard screaming and knocking. straightaway called the police. When 3 adult men came to the call, they were stunned. They were opened by a neighbor, who had the keys. My grandmother was sitting on the couch, on which a pregnant girl collapsed. There was a big red stain on the couch. So, soon we will wait for 2 hours to load, and ordered the gray-haired police officers. Second, the man took the girl in his arms and carried the car. Grandmother hurried after them. Driver turned on the flashers, hurried to the hospital on the other side of the city. Young woman never came to my senses. Jumped out nurses, I loaded on a gurney and took it away. Doctor took grandma to the waiting room, gave her a sedative, conducted a conversation and prepared for different outcomes. Woman was ready, she already knew how it would all end. Once upon a time when I was young, I had experienced something like this before. But when she was married, her husband supported her in a difficult situation. Oh, not only grandma. You well done, what did the neighbors guess to use, said the copy, you will have an apartment. Closure, should we go, thank you very much. Now I know what I would do without you, thank you grandma. Neighbor will close. I core, so just in case I gave the neighbor's key, so that in case of emergency she could open it. Fine invented, do not worry, young girl quite coped, cheered up the cops, fled. Beverly spent long hours waiting, when the doctor comes out of the operating room and says that all is well and Grace is alive and well. Each a minute seemed unbearable torture. Resounded door knock, then another sound of footsteps. A short elderly man in a white coat came out. You are on grandma, do I get it right? The man asked. Yes, it's me, the woman replied hastily. Young woman alive, but it's scary to think, to happen to draw in a couple of hours later. All went very smoothly, the child could not be saved, they are in critical condition, but stable. Think that in the morning I will feel better. You go home, and at 9 o'clock in the morning come back to visit her. I do not worry, we have a psychologist, and he will prepare her for the bad news. All will go well, she is very young, still has time to give birth. Grandmother listened carefully to the doctor and went home, but I still couldn't sleep. To overcome stress and woman Perry washed the sofa cover and put on a new one, did a complete cleaning. Beverly didn't know how the granddaughter perceived the information, because she was ready to become a mother. But on the other hand, maybe everything really happened for the best. By week Grace came home. She lost a lot of weight, turned pale, but it was great. Young woman spoke normally, and talked to my grandmother about what happened. Beverly understood, what Grace overcame a lot, to look so calm, accepted the situation. Yes, do not be offended, but I'll go home, I want to reconcile with my mother. I know that one lives now, she needs my help. Want go back to school and make things right. Right, certainly, I will visit you in a couple of months, transfer, we will live together, like before. They smiled, looking at the bright face of the grandmother, she really saved her life. The next morning the girl was already sitting on the bus, making the long way back. Now he seemed soothing to her, even nice. All the way she listened to music and just enjoyed the little trip. For snow fell by the window, endless fields stretched beyond the horizon. Desert, the white road led her home. Young woman missed my mother, who finally took over. It's time to fix the world and start life from scratch. Grace was grateful that never became a mother. Young woman was sure, and amp, quote, what can improve your personal life? And amp, quote, it's too early to start a family. I did not return home to. Mother recovered at school. Life is back to normal again. What was it like before the advent of Jordan? Before New Year, Grace stood in the store. Where did you pay for gifts for a friend, mothers and grandmothers? She rejoiced in the New Year's fuss, and spent time in the pleasant company of a friend. And tried to find out what Grace hid from her in a little red box. Girls went up to the 3rd floor of the mall and sat down at the food court. If I wish I knew, how will it all end, I would, maybe, thought 10 times, Grace said. All always comes back like a boomerang, summed up there, this boomerang hits too hard. But I'm glad that it's all right now. I returned to school, getting ready to go to college. Enough with me this hope for other people's money. Herself at work, Grace said. Teachers, you're in total shock. Didn't show up for weeks, now he goes to every lesson and prepares for exams. About dumb laughs. I same, looking at you, decided to take ahead and start learning. Now I want to depend on someone. You know, your situation taught me a lot. You just don't be offended, then I'm not offended. Herself to blame. I took all the gifts to the pawnshop and sold them. Money left, spend a little on gifts, the rest I will postpone in 6 months. It will come in handy. To me, Mom also helped with work. So in January I will go handing out flyers. Want postpone it a little more, so it will not be redundant. Not pushed a friend with an elbow. And turned around and saw, what Jordan sits with a new passion, not even that, what was on the phone. She shrugged and said that her God saved her from such a scumbag. Girls pick up trash from the table, put it on a tray and carry it to the counter. They enjoyed the beautiful atmosphere, flashing garland. Photographed next to a big Rio Christmas tree, which is decorated with red and gold balloons. Girlfriends took each other's hand and went home, singing Christmas melodies. Around swirling large flakes of snow, which have just begun.